right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to Marquette University Law School, Eckstein Hall. I'm Mike Goucher, and this is On the Issues. As you know, this is our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people who, as we like to say, are doing interesting, important work in this region and beyond. And today we are joined by the president of the Milwaukee Bucks, Peter Feigin. Won't you please give him a warm welcome to Marquette Law School?
I just want to note that some of my teammates up in the far corner were not clapping. Yes, just for the record.
It's good to have that support from those closest to you.
It's a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So we're going to spend a little time today, about 45 minutes of me asking questions of Peter Feigin, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes for you in the audience to ask some questions. We're going to cover a lot of different subject matter today, but I wanted to begin by introducing you to this room, because even though you have been sort of the public face of the franchise over the last year or so, there are many people in this room who don't know about your background, your experiences in business. So why don't you share a little bit of that with us?
Sure. I am a 45-year-old male.
Sounds like a police report.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Manhattan and New York City by two parents who were both extremely successful professionals. My dad primarily in the cosmetics business, my mom in the ad agency business. I went to a small liberal arts school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania called Franklin and Marshall, which was great, where I played soccer and basketball and had a great time. I've got two brothers, one of which is an identical twin, who is a headmaster of a school in New York City. I've married a girl I went to high school with, and we've been married for 17 years. We've got two kids that are a boy who's 12, who's my only friend, and
for now,
and a girl 14 who I begged to be my friend to do it. Very close family. My wife's parents live in New York. I had a pretty interesting, fun, great, blessed career where I got out of school and I went to go work for Six Flags theme parks in what I would call almost a management training program for a few years. Spent a summer in Gurney. If you haven't done that, I suggest everybody spend a summer in Gurney for doing that. All primarily kind of on the brand side and on the sales side. And then from Six Flags, I kind of got the real blessing of meeting Ernie Grunfeld, and kind of on a 15-minute meeting became the vice president of marketing for the New York Knicks, which as a New York kid and a basketball nut and unbelievable, you kind of hit the promised land, at 26, 27 years old. I did that for a few years and then really kind of took the risk of my life and went to a private aviation company that was just starting, which is called Marquette Jet, which was basically a company that subleased from NetJets, which was like a Berkshire Hathaway company. Long story short, we created a great brand and really kind of created an $800 million business in about 7 or 8 years and sold it to Berkshire Hathaway and NetJets. And then I worked for NetJets for a period of time. During that period, which is interesting, my identical twin brother taught all of the Lazarys, who were one of the primary owners, and all of the Eden's kids, who were it, which is interesting. Mark Lazary started to look at teams probably 7 or 8 years ago, and my brother suggested, I've got a really good-looking brother who will be a little bit different than your dorky financial, portfolio analyst when they look at a team. You should take him on the operations side. So that's really how I got kind of hooked up with the ownership, is I was that operations branding sales guy who had intimate knowledge of running a professional basketball team at Madison Square Garden on the marketing side. And we looked at a lot of teams, and we actually came to Milwaukee probably 3 years ago. And Senator Cole really got to, I'd say, the 8th or 9th inning of it, and basically kind of stopped and said he really wasn't ready to sell the team. But he would call us, and we'd be the first person he talked to, because we agreed in principle that we'd keep this team here. We agreed in principle on kind of what the value of the team would be. And I think Senator Cole really appreciated and liked Mark in a very deep, sincere way. And that really is how we ended up doing the deal team. At the time of the deal, now almost 2 years ago, I was working for Deluxe Entertainment, which is $1.5 billion international production, post-production asset management company in Hollywood, which basically, for all those that are old enough, if you see the slate at the end of a movie that says Color by Deluxe, that's Deluxe, which touches in some shape or form probably 50% of every motion picture, television show, or television commercial in the world. And that was an interesting, fun experience. Ron Perlman owns Deluxe. That was an interesting life experience to work for that company. And then I just kind of got the luckiest kind of magic wand hit when we started to really talk about owning and managing this team, and the owners kind of took me in the corner and said, do you want the opportunity of a lifetime to go way beyond what a team is? And I kind of looked at him and said, well, sounds pretty good. And that's really in simple form, like how it happened. And we really kind of, I'd say we had the full vision formed, but the vision constantly evolves in what this is. But it's so much more than basketball, and it's so much more than the Bucks. And we simply go back to, the simple goals, because I work for three guys that are in their own way, like all out of this world, like successful, but they all share the same thing. They are rarely pleased and they're never satisfied. So as good as you can do it, it's never really good enough, or we don't really pop open champagne too often to get it. But it's an unbelievable experience, and the last year of my life has been really the most exciting, dramatic, incredible year of my personal life. And that's probably the last time I'll say my or I or anything else, because really what we've done is surrounded this team with a couple hundred people who really do all the work. I take a lot of the credit when it's good. I kind of shy away when it's bad. But this has just been awesome. And I don't think this room, I don't think myself, has any fathom of what this is going to be. This is going to be miraculous. I mean, we were talking about how do we become the premier team on the marketing, on the brand, on the sales side internationally, not in the state of Wisconsin, not in the city of Milwaukee, but how do we really reimagine how we're going to forge relationships in China, for example. So that's Peter Feigin in a nutshell.
Let's get into the future of the franchise, the state of the franchise, because you talk about the excitement that you've felt and that you hope other people are feeling. And yet Milwaukee presents some interesting challenges. It is a smaller NBA franchise. It has had periods of success. As a kid, I remember the Lou Alcindor and Oscar Robertson championship days, the Bobby Dandridge days. And you can remember the 80s, and we had some good teams in the 80s, even the early 2000s. But we've not had a long history of winning in the last 20 years or so. You've got a small market. You haven't won a lot. What do you have to do to change to a winning culture?
So I'll answer that by saying what you can't screw up is pretty much like how it happened. So I worked for Madison Square Garden and the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks have screwed up a ton, but you can make a lot of money and you can get a lot of audience and you can charge whatever you want, and because there's 16 million people within like the DMA of New York City. So I was a genius marketing guy at the Garden because you really couldn't screw up. Like you'd really have to work hard to fail and not get that building packed and not do the prices, not get the television. Here, it's the challenge of, boy, you've really got to be good because the market doesn't exist. You've got to take the semi-interested, the very interested, and the passionate and aggregate them together and keep them involved in this team. And it's all about the product and it's all about the touch point. So you've got to build a winner. No matter what, you have to win. You have to win. You have to have a roadmap for winning too. So I think this state, particular, passionate about sports. You can own the mind, you can own the heart, but boy, you better have a plan, and it better be authentic that you are building towards a championship, and that's like what we're doing. And then I think on the service and the product side, you can't joke around. You really need the best of breed, and you need every touch point of this team, whether you're buying a sweatshirt, whether you're eating a hot dog, it better be warm, the beer better be cold, and the bathrooms better be clean at the very simple part. And you laugh, but that's part of the service promise that you really have to create. So it's building the best of class. So win or lose, and I say this, they do an unbelievable job at Lambeau, they do an unbelievable job at Miller Park. Experientially, it's the best of class. Like, you love the experience when you go there, and we want to do that same thing whether you're listening to us on the radio, you're on the television, or you're in the arena.
In some respects, is the model for a team like the Bucks the San Antonio Spurs. Similar size market, great history of success, consistency both on the floor and off the floor. is that a model for what you do here?
Boy, I think if we could bottle what San Antonio did, it'd be just fantastic, because that really is the long-term vision of, I mean, they revolutionized international recruiting, and kind of role players and how to do that. But that is the model. So, how we envision, there are no more small markets, really, if you can build it, because what the digital world has done, what media has done, has just kind of expanded what these markets. So you see cities like Oklahoma City. Has anybody here been to Oklahoma City? Yeah, Oklahoma City. It's like a little bit better now, but go to Oklahoma City 10 years ago. I mean, Milwaukee's 10x like Oklahoma City. You see Indiana, like-minded city. You see San Antonio, like fabulous, great success, and it's all about like really creating like a great product, a winner, and like a great service quotient.
Give me a sense of, you talked about winning, and you're off to a start. You're 1-3 coming out of the blocks. When you work in professional sports and you work in a market like Milwaukee, slow starts can really have serious consequences, can't they? I mean, does it make you nervous? Clearly, you want to be out of the blocks faster than that. Does it make you a little nervous?
I would lie to you if I didn't get sick to my stomach when we lose a game. It's like, it's the truth. And would it be better to start 3-0? Absolutely. But it's a long season. This is a building team. We're not nervous about, like, for us,
high expectations.
But listen, we've got point guards that are evolving, which quarterback a team. We've got the truth is, for us, if Giannis and Jabari become who we think they'll become, you'll end up with two of the stronger players kind of in the league in a couple of years, and that's really the foundation of the team. And then you build around that. And these guys are young guys. We've got 11 of these guys are under 25 years old. I mean, Jason is literally preparing class and executing a class every practice.
You've got a number of guys who are younger than some of the players on the Marquette basketball team,
right,
on your team.
Right.
Giannis and Jabari and some of those guys.
Yeah, we have a 19-year-old kid was our first-round draft pick, in Rashad Vaughn. I mean, the reality is, like, it takes a long time. You're not winning NBA championships with teenagers and young 20-year-olds.
This is a bigger question here, and this is about the NBA into the future, because the Bucks, if the NBA is successful, the Bucks will obviously be beneficiaries of that success. And so I'd like you to take us 10 years out on the future of the NBA, because I would say, just as a bystander looking at the product, that the NBA has certain demographic advantages going for it. It's become a very popular sport around the world, but it's popular with young folks. Where do you see this sport in terms of both in this community, but also internationally in 10 years?
So just take participation. There's not more of a participatory sport in the world than NBA basketball. And I mean the world. Take digital like traffic. 50% of our traffic online comes from China. I mean, it's really, they're real numbers. Like, it's incredible where the international growth is, where the growth is here in the States. So MLB baseball, fantastic. NFL basketball, fantastic. They are not multicultural melting pots of participation. They're just not. The NBA has this like incredible advantage to really be this melting pot ethnically, culturally, socioeconomically, to really have every kid in the world playing basketball, aspiring to be in the NBA and participating and engaging in NBA basketball. And what I mean by that is now fans are engaged because of what's happening on dual screens. I mean, people are playing fantasy sports, kids are on their Xbox, people are watching games and following stats on their mobile devices, so it's a whole new world. They're literally interacting, with NBA basketball, so it's a whole different stratosphere.
Big part of the buzz about the Bucks this year has dealt with the arena, and I want to spend obviously a few minutes talking about the arena project. So bring us up to date on where we are. My understanding is next week there's a City Plan Commission meeting, I think, and you're going to have to, in the very near future, reveal more of what the plans for the new arena look like, practice facility, new parking ramp, all of that. Where are you in that process?
So we just submitted about a week ago or 2 weeks ago the general plan design, which basically is very 30,000 feet up, aggregate view of what this looks like. We have due a detailed plan design that really starts getting into like the details and the inches and the square feet and like what the breakout of this works that is due like next week. We're actually hoping on this weekend, if we can get it done, to start showing the public some interesting pictures at a party we're having on the 7th, like for the afternoon, to celebrate the building of the arena. But
preceding the game Saturday?
Preceding the game Saturday. So we are hoping to show it. And the planning council is that, what's important to know is every single facet of this design and development now goes through the Common Council for committee, for planning, for approval before we do anything. So it's a good segue, topics like 4th Street, what happens, how do we build that? So
yeah, there's talk about that for people who aren't as familiar with it, about 4th Street, maybe a section of it being closed so you could do a public plaza in that area. Is that still the plan?
Well, that's the plan. That's the plan for us. We have to have like proof and product and actually present it in a way. But for us, 4th Street is essential to have like as a seamless pedestrian traffic way to go to a public plaza, to go to Old Third World Street. How to open this up and create a neighborhood. And just to put things in perspective, you're not really changing the world. There's not a ton of vehicular traffic on 4th Street like today, like that really changes the world. To get it. So our plan would really be to, how do we need to evolve and completely change this neighborhood to make that a dramatic effect. And again, the whole key to this is not really that the Bucks are playing 50 games a year, but that we actually have thousands of people living and working here. And what does that look like in urban planning?
The renderings that I think you showed last spring of what the arena might look like, and that's very preliminary, but can you give us some insight? Do the new renderings look a little bit like that? Have they changed greatly?
Oh, they look much better.
Yeah.
I mean, let me tell you, they look awesome. Like, they are so cool. I think what you'll see is really refinement, not dramatic dismissal from where it is, but you'll see more of a sense of what the arteries look like that really open it up to the south and to the north, to the east and the west. You'll also see kind of refinement of things like the roof, like the public plaza, like how the streets actually meld into each other. So again, it's even getting into like more detail because now we're really getting into the cost analysis, the RFPs for construction managers and design, and what this is actually going to be.
Can you still do it for $500 million?
Well, I think it'll be very hard, and I think one of the things that's important to know is, boy, it's probably my butt on the line because everything over we pay for. So it's our goal to get it in 500 million or less. I think it'll be really challenging to do that.
And the how high could you go? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think if you look at it, listen, I don't know how many people have renovated their homes or their apartments. Like, use it as an example. Like, let's figure out what you want your finishes to be, and boy, you can go 20% over budget, to do it. But I think we've got very sensible, efficient owners who all have the same thing under mind. Is like, how do we do this the right way, the best way, and like within the set budget?
The original plans, I think, called for 17,000 seats. And I want to ask you about that because the Bradley Center currently seats about 18,600 for basketball. Why something somewhat smaller than what we have today?
So go back to the small market and go back to supply and demand. So how do you fill this arena? How do you make it the most successful, and how do you make it the best experience? So this will be designed for NBA basketball. So if you've ever been in Indiana, if you've ever been to Brooklyn, it's like the court is the centerpiece, is the stage, and it's kind of on top of it. Right now, it's not really, the Bradley Center is not really designed specifically for basketball. It's a little spread out, it's a little high pitch, it's a little
like
long.
A hockey arena.
Could be like a hockey arena, yes. Mm-hmm. If you said it could be like a hockey arena, it could be like a hockey arena.
It could.
But, for us, it's how to make the most efficient. And by the way, we want to sell the place out, so feasibility-wise, like what is that number that does it? And it's really the 17 to 17.5. And on the financial economic side, you're also flipping the bowls. And what I mean by that is currently the Bradley Center has about 6,000 seats down low in the lower bowl and about 11,000 seats up high. The other seats are made up by suites and different seats. Economically, that's really hard that's convince concerts to come, to really have profitable basketball games, because you need more seats down low where there's a premium on the tickets and less seats like up high. So we're totally flipping the bowls on this. So, in a perfect world, you're going to really get around 10,000 seats down low and about 6,000 seats up high, and again, like another 1,000 or 1,500 seats like in that suite area.
I think you've said that the goal now is to start construction in 2016. There had been some hope that maybe you could have gotten in the ground late this year, but start 2016, open in 2018. That is the current plan?
I think that's our plan. I think that's reality. I think that's realistic, and I think getting this done in 24 months would be almost a miracle to get it done, and we're realizing time-wise with going to committee, with getting approvals, with doing it's a little more timely than we'd like it to be. But I will tell you, like, and again, people have different definitions of starting construction. If I showed you, the $10 million we've spent to date on environmental, on feasibility, you'd say we'd started. And on parallel.
Any surprises so far in the $10 million you've spent to study the environmental?
Well, I think there are real issues on there are real issues on development on the Park East where we have a central sewage system that we'll have to move, to develop. I think it's one of the reasons the Park East has never been developed like in a big way. There are a few hundred pylons in the Park East from the former highway that had. So how do you take those out or build around them is going to be a real structure. And then I think one of the things is the grading of the whole area. Like in a perfect world, you'd like to, for lack of a better, submerge your arena a little bit, and because of the water table in Milwaukee, it's very challenging to do. So we'll have to build this at grade. In a perfect world, you'd like to walk into the entrance of arena and almost like walk down to your seats. But now we can engineer in a way that it's pretty close to that effect.
I think you've told me in the past that there'll be other things happening almost simultaneously. A practice facility, you'll be trying to take down one parking ramp, maybe put up another parking ramp. Is that all going to happen at the same time, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, the projects we have going on today, right today, are how do we build an arena and think about the transition of the existing arena. So at the same time, this arena is being built 50 feet north of the current Bradley Center, 50 feet. So you are moving the ice plant, you are moving the loading docks, you are moving transport, you're redesigning some surface parking lot. You are going to build a new arena, build a new plaza and live block, demolish the parking structure on 4th and Highland. You're going to build a parking structure on the Park East, and you're building a practice facility and hopefully some commercial on the Park East as well. All projects are major, multi-million-dollar projects, of which we're all starting like simultaneously at the same time with the hope to open them up relatively at the same time.
And you still have to negotiate a lease with the Wisconsin Center District.
Right. So that's what we do on our spare time. Is we sit with the Secretary of Administration and negotiate not just a lease, but a lease, a development deal, and a non-relocation deal.
Mm-hmm. Part of the arena project is what's been called the ancillary development, another $400 to $500 million in surrounding development around the arena. And I'd like you to speak a little bit about that. I noticed that I think during your media day, one of your owners said that he wanted to take a step back to develop more of a master plan for that development. And so when you hear step back, there might be some people who are, deeply jaded and skeptical saying, are they still going to go ahead with the $400 to $500 million? Where does that stand? What are you thinking right now?
Well, I'll tell you, step back is all relative. I think when any of us say step back, we actually want to have a finalized roadmap before we do anything. So, for instance, a conceptualized like marketing plan for food and beverage sounds like a no-brainer. Sounds like what are you talking about? But what is the look, the feel, and the tone of what this is going to be like in arena, outside of arena, and ancillary development is really important. It's all part of kind of the planning. And if you don't set that roadmap down to begin with, you're kind of doing it stream of consciousness, which is not what we want to do. So I think one of our first things is to finalize, and I think we're all pretty close on like where we think phase one and part of phase two are. And the other part of it is like we are working as hard as we can to get tenants like immediately and residents to build this with pre-existing residents to live in the apartments and pre-existing tenants to live in the commercial space.
How much interest is there amongst possible developers, national brands? How much interest is there in that parcel surrounding the proposed arena?
So I think we're in the dating game now. So there's overwhelmingly there's a great interest, but nobody really sees what the pretty girl or the handsome boy looks like like behind the screen, so everybody wants to explore what the real interest is. It'll be interesting to see like how we position it and how the bids come out to do it. But I will tell you that we've got a list of over 35 local developers, over 25 national developers that are all aggressively interested in what the plan is, what do RFPs look like, how are you going to develop, what's the square footage to do it. So we haven't gone out with detailed plans to any of these folks yet to do it, but the interest is incredible.
I want to talk to you a bit about the process, how the arena deal actually happened. Probably some interest in here. And not going to relitigate the arguments pro and con, but I think it is important to talk about. So I'm struck by several things. At the end of the day, this arena deal with public financing was approved by a comfortable margin in the state legislature, by the Common Council. I was struck by the fact that in many respects it was Republican lawmakers doing a lot of the heavy lifting to make sure the project got built in a Democratic stronghold of Milwaukee. I was struck by the fact that in many parts, and this is not just a Milwaukee discussion, many places around the country there is a great aversion to public money being spent on arena projects. So now as you have a little time, since all of this has come down, to sit back and reflect on it, what is your take on what happened and why?
Well, I can tell you throughout the process, I probably texted my mom about 4,000 times saying, this is surreal. Like this is not reality. Like what actually happens in the sausage making of politics and the financing of an arena. So I can tell you there's no clear path, but I can tell you that from the day Governor Walker kind of spearheaded the public financing from the state side, we really did have this overwhelming like support from the state side as well as like the local side, and people became more and more passionate and vocal like throughout the process to get it done. And I think what it really was our strong point, what we really like were selling and were truthful about is like, this is economic development. This is economic development 101. Like we are changing the landscape of the biggest city in the state of Wisconsin to improve the state, to improve the city, to create jobs, to create economic development, to create a magnet for tourism, and to create like people to change the landscape of what currently exists. And we didn't really stray away from that. It's what we believe. You know, it is like, we think this is an unbelievable ripe opportunity to transform what currently is like nothing, you know, and I always kind of get the argument of like, oh, you gotta be crazy, like arenas don't move anything. Well, I'd agree with you completely. Arenas on islands, like the Bradley Center, don't change anything. Arenas like within like a civic infrastructure, within a neighborhood, as part of commercial, as part of residential, and as part of retail, changes the world. And we've seen those models, and we've seen them in like-minded cities to change it. So I think we really stay true, and I think the city of Milwaukee particularly understands like what this means for jobs, what this means for sustainability. And by the way, like what we don't even touch on, and I will tell you what I care about, like listen, this is a state where everybody in this room puts on their green and gold jerseys on Thursdays and takes them off on Mondays and doesn't wash them for 18 weeks. Like there is a pride of ownership, and I promise you, like we're building that pride of ownership of what it is to be a professional team, to represent a city like Milwaukee. So the emotional and the cerebral part of like having and loving a professional team versus losing a professional team. We certainly didn't use that argument a big part because it had to stay financial and growth based, but we were very concerned. We still are. This is an investment in the future and about economic development.
When you say jobs, what do you mean? What kind of jobs? Who gets the jobs? What can we expect to see in the months and years ahead?
Yeah, so I think through the building process, there's over 10,000 construction and labor jobs like through this process. For the end use jobs, you know, there's a minimum of 3,000 full-time end use jobs like in this development. Those are big miraculous numbers to go in. And there's also like a different way of like, I can tell you, and our owners have said that, like we're committed to family supporting jobs on the end use side. Like how do we reimagine and really redefine like the way an arena is run, the way a complex is run, a district and ancillary development?
Well, what do you say, and you know this sentiment still exists in parts of our community and around the state in some places. People just simply say, I just fundamentally disagree with the use of public dollars to to build a sports facility when you've got owners who are very wealthy men? They could foot the bill if they really wanted to. Why do we have to spend tax dollars on this project? What do you say? Can you possibly explain that to them, and can you win them over in any way?
Well, Mike, I look at them like I look at you, and I say I respectfully disagree with you. That, if this wasn't a sports team, it'd be a different conversation. Because again, this is about economic development. I can take you through deals of corporate headquarters and other deals where tax abatements and deals really to keep companies in this. And this is much more than a company. This actually fuels a big part of the economy. And we don't back away from the point of this is not $150 million. This is $250 million of private investment. This was part of the deal when we purchased the team that Senator Cole, who by the way is the most unappreciated philanthropist in the history of the world, who really did this cause to keep this team in Milwaukee, that Senator Cole was contributing $100 million and we would contribute $150 million, that this is a $250 million private investment into the growth of a city that desperately needs it and that will return on investment. And I would have loved to, take the argument that this is about how you can't let Kohl's or Johnson Controls or anybody else leave this state, because it means even more, because I will tell you, back to just the core team, this team has to be a big magnet for why people live here, have a sense of pride, how employers appreciate their employees, how they have hospitality, how we are a first-class city. I will just tell you, and I'm an NBA guy, so I could be overselling that, but you are not a first-class, first-rate city without an NBA team, period.
I feel that strongly about it.
Well, I do, but I get paid to say that too. So, yeah.
You touched on something that I did want to follow up on. You made a couple of comments, I think, today about the nature of fan support, and I want to ask you about this. I mean, the Bucks, I think of the professional sports franchises in the state. You have the Packers, and I mean, everybody follows the Packers. Everybody lives and dies with the Packers. I think the Brewers over the last decade have become much more of a state franchise, probably in part because of their ballpark. You're driving down from Rhinelander, you're going to see a ball game, even if it's raining.
Right.
That helps. How do the Bucks become that statewide franchise?
So about a year ago, this older gentleman grabbed me with his bear claw and kind of, where I have to be respectful because I'm learning the Wisconsin way of smiling and listening to everybody and being a good citizen. I listened to him and he said, "Let me just tell you one thing." I said, "Okay." He goes, 20 years ago, I went in to fill up my gas tank and I put my 2 Packers tickets on my dashboard, went in to go pay the bill. I came back, my window was smashed and there were 4 tickets on the dashboard. That's where the Packers were. You'll kill that. The promise is unbelievable. So, about fan support. So I think what happened is, we had some atrophy and we had some apathy. And you can't have that in pro sports. Pro sports, we've got to hug you, you've got to hug back. It's an engagement. It's a two-way engagement. You've got to show, much like any company or anything, we've got to invest back in the product. And it's a challenge. And we've got to win back fan by fan by fan. And we've got to win back city by city by city and county. And that's literally what we're doing. And a part of that is how do we improve the product on the court? How do we improve it off the court? How do we improve the experience? I mean, this is sales and marketing 101. We've got an unbelievable product, which is a great advantage, but we are literally kind of grasping back and engaging fans. And this is a great team. We're invested in this for the future, and we have an unbelievable legacy too. I mean, the nice thing about this state is if you've got 5 or 6 million people, at some point, sometime, other than the people who are probably 1 to 12 years old, you were a Bucks fan. You just kind of lost it. A little bit. So we've got this generational thing where we've got to grasp every young parent to bring their kids, because then we'll own their kids as fans. We've got to get every parent to use their disposable income and use it as a business tool as well to come to it. So we're marketing to everybody in targets. People say, "What's your target? Where are you soft?" I go, "We don't do B2B too well. We've got a big thing. We need to do B2C better. We'd love to do youth marketing, ethnic marketing, you name it. It's all on the list because we're all kind of below the bar."
Do you see this as in terms of building relationships, building goodwill in the community? This is not meant as a criticism of the prior ownership at all, but I'm asking, do you feel like it's a rebuilding job or is it simply a building job?
I think it's a building job because it's It's a little bit different proposition, like with the development. I think what's really tough is like, I'm obviously a lot different than a lot of people who were raised in Wisconsin and Milwaukee. I might be a little more brash. I work for 3 guys who run hedge funds in New York. It's a little bit different. So I think like what's so nice about this whole community and kind of the Midwest in general is there's got to be a big trust factor. Like there's got to be this trust that like doesn't exist in a lot of other places. A lot of other places you buy your ticket, it's great, I'm doing that. Here it's like people care about their money in a big way. They look at their receipts and count, and there's a value of like spending and what they spend on. And boy, they better believe in like their product and what they're engaging in. So I think it's time, and I think it's a building proposition. And for us, it's I'll tell you what number I'll care about the most over the summer. I'll care about our retention number. So we've got an unbelievable job of building new season ticket holders and everything. That means nothing, unless we have like an over 95% retention level of those season tickets. What's the satisfaction level? Because we're all kind of baselining for the first time of like where we are. So to me, it's like, how do we build this fan base? And by the way, it's all about momentum. How do we keep this going?
This is something I wanted to touch on because I think this is a sort of an interesting point in pro franchises that exist in Wisconsin. People always wondered, do the players actually want to be here? Do they want to live here? I heard you talking the other day, and I was a little surprised by this fact. A number of Bucks players have purchased homes now in the Milwaukee area. Right. Is that correct?
A number have purchased homes, and a number of them live here, like year-round now, and practice with us.
And the last guy who really did that was Ray Allen, who was traded, but he was really one of the last players who lived here year-round.
Yeah, I tell you, like a great example is Jabari. I mean, Jabari has his family here. He's moved here. He said publicly, like, Milwaukee's my home. This is a Chicago kid, by the way. It's kind of surreal, which is awesome. The best analogy for that is how we recruited Greg Monroe. I mean, Greg Monroe, we had Mark Lazary, Jason Kidd, John Hammond. Everybody came. We marketed. We had an unbelievable marketing thing to Greg Monroe. I'll tell you. New starting center. Guy was top 3 free agent in the league. Think of Reggie White, coming to what that meant to coming to the Packers and what the difference was. Literally, I could tell you like, hey, Jason sold him because he died of. I'll tell you what really sold him is Chris Middleton texting him 100 million times, telling him like, we love it here, we live here, this will be the greatest city. And Chris is like a good friend of his that really endorsed like the Milwaukee story. And that's a big part of like how we're building our infrastructure too, is like, how do we take care and resource these young guys? So what's a new practice facility look like? We're not building that for the sake of building it. These guys live here. Like these guys, are in a practice facility 16 hours a day. How do you make it like a home away from home and make them want to be here 12 months a year?
I'm going to take audience questions in just a moment, but I did want to spend just a couple of minutes on something that the Bucks are doing with this university. There are plans, as some people in the room know, for a new building over at 8th and Michigan, which is now mostly a vacant lot. It's going to be a new place for sports medicine, for athletic research, some indoor facilities for soccer and lacrosse. But why are you getting involved with Marquette? What is behind that? How does that look to you as you move forward?
So the way it started was pretty funny. I mean, like the way this happened was president level, Wes Edens and Troy Flanagan, who's our sports science doctor, Troy Flanagan, who's literally like a nuclear physicist who runs our sports science. We all started talking about development, and if you're familiar with Mike Lovell, much like Wes Edens and Mark Lazary, these guys are, even though he's an academic, he's a serial entrepreneur and serial developer, which is pretty exciting. Like when you sit down and talk, and we started to talk about what we've got to build in the next 5-10 years. And what was really like fascinating and great was like, oh, we throw things up against the wall, like we're gonna redefine sports science, and Mike's like, oh, what do you mean? Well, it's like, listen, it's about really like, it's about research and development on blood oxygen levels. It's about hydration. It's about case studies. We want to build a continuing education forum for other sports. And Mike and Bill Scholl, who's the athletic director here, looked at us and said, no, we're doing that. We're going to do that. And we're like, oh, why don't we do it together and not build 2 facilities and have 2 staffs? And that's really like how that evolved. So how do we have this collegiate professional association that basically is the best of the academic and the best of the performance, and usually has a model. And we want to do it really quickly, so we're the first and kind of do it the best, and really create a continuing education, an unbelievable facility for existing athletes on the Marquette level, and on the science side, really pioneer things that haven't been done before in the sports science field.
It is an interesting field. I was reading a story before we came down here for the event today. The woman who's been working with Jabari Parker on his rehabilitation from his ACL injury. I mean, I was sort of astounded at what has gone into that, and that this is what she does. She studies how to come back from this injury, this particular injury, how to come back from it. That's the kind of knowledge and stuff you're talking about, isn't it?
I think it's so specialized, and people don't think about this. In professional sports, wellness is an arms race. Literally, we win the longer our players are able to stay on the court. How do you keep them healthy? How do you think preventative versus reactive? And that has changed the whole viewpoint of medicine in professional sports. That has, what is training, what is eating? It's not even eating anymore, it's fuel. Yeah, so our medical people are like, Peter, it costs a lot because we have to fuel them. I'm like, buy unleaded, fuel them with less money. Yeah, but it's all about fueling them, it's oxygenating them, it's how they recover, to do it. So of course, we all sit here and go God, these are 20-something-year-old kids, they recover automatically, but that is really where this is getting, and how do you fine-tune that? And what's interesting with Marquette and where we will get to is how does that relate to the general population, and how do we really create practices that change the way people combat preventative health?
So my final question before we take questions from the audience, how will you define success this year? At the end of the year, what would be success for the Milwaukee Bucks and for you?
So I think improvement for us. So I think when I sit and talk to our team, and we talk about metric improvement. So how are we going to generate more revenue? How are we going to have more season tickets? How are we going to do that? When we talk to basketball operations, it's about how are we going to have more wins? How are we going to go further in the playoffs? And then really talk about kind of the other aspects of it in the community. How are we further embedded in the fabric of this community? How are we, one of the metrics we look at is listen, we've not just have to be a stronghold in Milwaukee. We've got to have an effect in every city in this state. So what's our awareness like? What's our things? We look at it at retail. Where do we grow in retail? So for us, it's constant improvement. So I'm one of those guys, we are going to take a lot of risks. We are going to do things that might be so dumb and make mistakes, but overall, it's all about how are we going to continue to raise the bar, to get to a level, and we're nowhere close. We're just starting. We're really a year into this. We've had such luck. We've had great team performance. We've got great young players. We've got the energy and momentum of a development around us. We've got a long way to go to really get this to the level.
Let's take some questions from the audience. If you're in the seating bowl, please press down on the rim, not on the button, but on the rim. Keep your finger down on that. If you're in the back, I see a fair number of students back there. Ryan has a microphone. He can walk over to you and take your question. Again, just questions, no speeches, as we always do at our events. So
you can save your negative comments for afterwards. My two partners, Alex and Jake, will take the negative questions. Yes.
Let me take questions. Yes, right there.
Can you tell us about the new Bucks Foundation?
I can. I can't. I can't tell you in depth about it because we don't have an in-depth kind of plan. I can tell you that one of the challenges when we kind of took over is there was no 501c3 associated with the team, so we had to kind of go quickly and apply for a 501c3 to have a Bucks Foundation. We got that at the end of the summer. We hired Elisa Dubese from Mortensen to kind of spearhead and quarterback and run our community and our social responsibility, as well as manage our foundation. I can tell you the general tenets of this foundation will be very simple. The mission is going to be really focused on youth and wellness and education. What that means in detail and execution, we haven't set out yet. We don't have a board for the foundation yet. We hope to have kind of a master plan, a go-forward fundraising plan and execution plan by the end of this year to kind of go into 16 with a full-fledged, here's what the Bucks Foundation is about. I will tell you a lot of our activity will be focused, we've kind of been everything to everybody without really a focus or any real sustainable programs or any real gravitating. One of our focuses kind of specifically in the charity was how do we associate with programs that we can actually measure, that are sustainable, that have some growth, and we can really affect in a big way. So I know I didn't answer your question, but we're thinking that through now.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I guess I would like to know what you're doing for these young men in the area of character development. I think in the state of Wisconsin, the Midwest, I think that's a real important issue. And Mark Murphy had addressed that on various things that they're doing for their teams, and I think it's important for these young men. And I guess I'd like to know what the Bucks organization is doing.
Great question. So I call them hard skills and soft skills. So the hard skills, Jason is involved in both. You know, how do we make these guys great athletes and great basketball players on the hard skills? The soft skills are how do we resource these guys in such a way? So beyond having an infrastructure around the team of how to, and by the way, these are, just imagine your own kids. These are 19, 22, 23-year-old kids. How to eat. I mean, how to eat is like a big deal. How to shake hands and look in your eye. I mean, these are all real social skills. So we have player development. We've got two highly regarded professional folks that we stole from the Indiana Pacers, who were the best of class. I always find that sometimes the best way to recruit is take the best people that exist who have done this successfully before and rip them away and convince them that this is the best place ever to work for, which so far has worked. So we've got player development folks who day to day are helping these guys. And just imagine kind of the infrastructure, what they're coming to. This is everything from how do you lease an apartment, how do you get it cleaned, how do you bring your parents into town, you know, all these touch points. You can't imagine what we deal with, like in a big time. There's continuing education. I will tell you, all of our owners have had several of these players as interns over the summer, but there's a real focus, you know, which again, all the soft skills on financial literacy. So I will tell you, one of the goals of ownership is, like, we do not want these guys going bankrupt after they play ball. And that sounds like
How big a problem in the NBA is
it's
that?
a big problem. It's a
Professional sports.
It's a big problem. How do they save? How do they understand what it is? None of these guys have had and this is the NBA, none of these guys have ever had checking accounts, you know, much less access to cash, you know, and they're surrounded by, unfortunately, sometimes not great infrastructure to make those decisions. So we are, what I say is, like, engaging deeply in their lives as much as we can, and we understand, like, where the opportunity is, and that's an interesting thing too, because it's all about trust and building infrastructure, and we're getting there. Like, you know you're there when they start calling you when things arrive and they feel comfortable doing it, and that's where we are. But that's a big part of having a training facility, big part of having a great medical staff, good part of having good psychologists is how do they have an infrastructure where these guys actually feel resourced and very secure and comfortable.
To make them comfortable, I don't mean to, but this does strike me because it was in the news, the John Henson incident, which was sort of an unfortunate incident. People in this room probably aware of it. Denied service at a jewelry store. It's kind of a big deal. What does the franchise do? What does the team do, your people, the people who work closely with these athletes do when something like that happens? Because that can change a perception about cities and everything else.
I'll just tell you our immediate response is right away to the care and understanding of the player, you know, of our family members. So right away, I mean, the first thing we did was get with John and make sure John was okay. And interestingly enough, John had never really been through something like that before. So it was a pretty interesting case, and he's done. I mean, the second thing we do, and again, we are a very public, very media associated like company, is we say, hey, listen, we certainly don't want to curb any of our players on social or what their voice is or anything else, but we want to help them, guide them, you know, in a way. And I will tell you, like, there are ways to do that, where John is like an extremely intelligent, social, like, great communicator, and went right to Instagram, for example. Well, that could be problematic for everybody, you know, and lucky, like, wasn't. We're always a big fan of, we can solve a lot of problems for you at big levels if you want to go. You know, there's nothing an Instagram post can't do that a op-ed in the Washington Post, you know, can't do if you really wanted to position it. But for us, it's taking the situation. We care 1,000% about the safety, the security, and the sanity of, like, our players and making sure they're good. And John is kind of like beyond reproach. He actually wants to get to a point, and we're working with him on, he wants to communicate the story and, like, how he actually, and kind of go around town and actually how to educate the youth on how to react, how to change it. Yeah. And wants to be like a really a spokesman, which is kind of phenomenal. about the whole thing. And I will tell you, everybody, like, you know, when we talk to the jewelry store owner and their people, like, the right reaction, you know, this is unfortunate, this is apologetic, and you take this at the highest level and you try to do it very quickly. Because as you know, in the press, like, these things can go any way.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Let me take this gentleman right here.
Would the Bucks be open to submitting a bid for the Olympics when the new stadium opens?
Would the Bucks be open to submitting a bid for the Olympics when the new arena opens?
I suppose so. I mean, I couldn't even, like, we've got enough going on. I wouldn't even, I'd say maybe.
But you see this, for example, for other major events. I mean, we've seen, you know, NCAA regionals. We've seen, you know, things like that being played there.
I say it like this. Listen, I want this arena, and we can't make promises of, like, the number of events, but I want this arena to do over 200 events. Listen, in the best season when you win a championship, the Bucks are 50 events. How do you make this the mecca of family entertainment, of concerts, of pep rallies, of social, of convention gatherings? Like, we want to reimagine of, like, what this magnet of an event space, like, will be like in a big way. So certainly, you know, if there was ever an opportunity to have a magnet of an international Olympics, I mean, we're working with the Pettit Center on speed skating trials. I mean, sounds silly, but, like, how do we build this whole community to really become a magnet for all these national and international events?
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Right before this, I actually got a text to get a ticket for tonight's game through the new the student rush program, and I was wondering what other initiatives the Bucks are doing to institute new technology in the new arena and the current one.
New technology in the current arena. So I would say that the current arena is like, let's get Wi-Fi capacity up to a decent amount of time. Like, so I'd say, like, start at the very, like, oh my God, like, it takes me an hour to get a text in to do it. I like to answer. We have way too many consultants on the new arena, but I will tell you one of the interesting things. By default, and if you do all the market research in the world, the market doesn't really care that the Milwaukee arena is the most technology advanced arena. They want it, but I will tell you by default, because we are the newest arena, it will be. And what that means is, like, everything from what the fiber's like to what the Wi-Fi is like, but more importantly, how do you interact on streaming, mobile? The whole world is going mobile. I don't need to get into the world, but we all have to acclimate to, like, the world is mobile, and what does that mean for infrastructure and engagement with a professional team? And it'll change the experience in the arena. So it will be, when this opens, like, it will be how you order food and how you get your retail. I mean, that's the biggest difference, you know. It is now how you buy your tickets, you know, like a large percentage of our tickets, you know, and next year I guarantee you we'll have over 50% of our season ticket holders will click a box to renew their tickets. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? How about this gentleman in the suit right back there? Hang on 1 second.
Once the legislature passed the vote, you got the votes, did you approach the NBA about an all-star game?
We approached the NBA, just to tell you what our ownership is like, we approached the NBA about an all-star game before we even bought the team. So yeah, I mean, one of our challenges here in the city is really kind of where the growth is. Like, we need more hotel rooms, like, to be honest with you, to be a good applicant for an all-star game. So that's part of the growth of where this happens, and, like, how do we evolve this city to have you know, probably a couple thousand more hotel rooms in the next for the all-star game. Is like when you RFP an all-star game, it's so much about traffic, hotel, and hospitality, and that's where we're deficient, like, in the city.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Right there, Ryan, you want to grab that guy back there?
You said a few words about how you're committed to family supporting jobs. I was just wondering what work you're doing to get residents who may be economically disadvantaged in Milwaukee into the jobs in the construction of the new arena.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think one of the things we've kind of, on the SBE side, on what we've agreed to as levels, but we want those all to be floors. Important for us, and what we found is a real deficiency is in the first source hiring, really targeting zip codes in areas that desperately need, like, the employment. a big deficit in the past is literally communications and marketing on like what opportunities actually are availed. So one of our pre-planning stages is actually how do we redefine the communication of the opportunities of all jobs, like of all the development jobs, the construction jobs, work development programs, and then as we build this end use jobs, which I mean, what are your retail jobs, what are your in-arena jobs, and those. So part of that is like really, and we forged like very, very deep-seated relationships with community leaders and developers like around specifically Milwaukee to have that foundation to kind of continue to have like real-time communication that people actually are aware of it, they're availed when the timing is and know, when we're hiring. So that's our step one.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes?
Hi, my question is, what is the team's plan, or do they have a plan of getting the inner city? Because we are really a blue collar city. Like, what is the team's plan to have the inner city really buy into the team and really have interest back into the team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot about that has to do with almost like what I would call like our community work is like we've got to bring the team to the community. So we've got to go out and kind of humanize our players a little bit and get them like in the community and get them everywhere around school, get them around. We've got to forge relationships with neighborhoods that make good sense, that we're supporting what they do. This is, to me, this is all hand-to-hand combat. This is literally winning fan by fan by fan. We'll do big youth projects like with people. I mean, the truth is our success is really about getting the entire city, the urban city, to buy in and to be fans. And we just have an unbelievable opportunity. My mom says I should use opportunity as the word instead of say how bad things are. Like, we have endless opportunity to embrace every young person in this city, which haven't been embraced, like to just love this team.
Other questions? Yes?
Yep. I have not heard in all of the planning for the new venue what the seating capacity is going to be versus what the Bradley Center has. Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I think we'll be about 1,000 or 1,500 less, depending on. So the Bradley Center gets up to 19,000. Like if you uncertain, like we'll probably be at the most 17,500.
Mm-hmm. Time for a couple more questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, with the new arena, kind of the rebranding efforts, and then you'd mentioned Giannis and Jabari kind of coming into their own. Do you sense that there's a window to capitalize on the attention for this team?
Yeah, is there a window really for this team? He said, you've got the arena coming, you've got Jabari and Giannis, you've got certain pieces, but do you really have a window here to get things to the point you feel they need to be? I mean, is it a couple years? Is it 3 years? Is it?
I think. Listen, if you had the magic wand, you'd crescendo when you open an arena. To kind of like here is we've got this unbelievable base. It's like a great healthy business. It's a great fan base. It's everything. But I mean, much like our team, I think it takes. It's going to take a couple of years. And trust me, I'm the most impatient, impulsive guy in the world. Like, it's not easy to do it, but it takes time. It takes proof and product, and that's where we are. So my goal is 2 to 3 years. If I can cut that in half, I'll tell you we're way ahead of where I thought we'd ever be. If you told me 18 months ago before I took this job, like where we'd be, I'd say we're pretty lucky. If you told me and you put me in the paper, I'd say we plan to be lucky. But I'd say yeah, I'd say we're pretty lucky.
Let me take one more question. Anybody? Yes, sir. Hang on 1 second. We'll get you a microphone here. Thanks.
I applaud you, first of all, on what you guys are doing in town, and the team that you brought is a bit different from what we had. But a lot of tax money was used to help with this, and a lot of private money as well. And I think it's a great opportunity you guys can do to do something about closing the skills gap with this big construction project coming up, and also the huge unemployment problem that Milwaukee has, and the exclusion of groups of people that have not been able to have these chances. Do you guys have a set plan in motion? Are you willing? I know you're partnering with some groups. What is the availability of getting partnering with you on some things?
Yeah, I think to answer that, in a macro way, we've got an unbelievable obligation to the public and to ourselves to kind of redefine the way participation is in this project. I think we'll announce in the next couple weeks kind of a couple firms we have spearheading our work development programs, which are the preeminent firms and have done some good things. I think we will do things differently and look for success. We're going to measure everything we do and make sure we're good. It will be a very challenging road. This is a challenging city to get things done and to change the way things are done. But we're completely dedicated to it and excited to get deep into it. So, and we've got to overexceed everything we do with expectations. So whatever we promise, we're not Milwaukee citizens. So when I say something like, got to make sure we do it or we lose equity in everything, we're not dumb to that fact. So we are trying to do everything the right way in a very considerate, smart, strategic way.
I'm going to wrap things up. Before we go, just a couple of words about upcoming events here at the law school. On November 10th, special time, 9 a.m., we'll be talking with some of the corporate members of the Near West Side Partners Group. This is a group that's dedicated to improving what's happening here on the Near West Side. So you'll hear from people like our president, Mike Lovell. You'll hear from the president of Harley-Davidson, the CEO of Harley-Davidson, the CEO of the Potawatomi Economic Development Corporation, top officials from Aurora, folks like that. They'll be talking about what's being done, actually some kind of exciting things happening there. November 18th, the chief judge for Milwaukee County, Maxine White, will be here for us. And I think there's a chance that there might be another Marquette Law School poll between now and the end of November. Not that I'm privy to anything like that. Having said that, I want to thank everybody in the room today for their time, their interest, and their attention, and most of all, thank Peter Feigin of the Milwaukee Bucks for being with us. Thank you. Thank you.